What you see here is the entire collection of the Uncharted video game series. Yep, as you can see, I have them all. Uncharted 1, Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, and even I got Uncharted 4. And if you look at it, I haven't even played it. It's weird. I heard that it's good, but for some reason I feel like I don't have kind of like the guts to play it, mostly because it's again one of those games that have the middle-age syndrome. You know that I call the middle-age syndrome all these games or movies that it's always gonna center on a character who has age, and he's gonna say, "Oh, those were the good old days, and now I'm old, and now I'm gonna do very old things and all these things." I know, circle of life and all these things, but sometimes even aging, seeing characters age and all these things, especially when considering the benefit that they are inanimate objects that can't be changed unless you know, creator said so. It feels kind of, how can I say, depressing. But don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that I have bad regards to this one. It's just that for some reason I felt that maybe if I have the opportunity to play this one, is mostly because mostly it will be the time if I had the opportunity to replay these ones. But here's the problem with now that I got these games, is that my PlayStation 3 controller is busted. So I can't play these ones. I think I have to find a way to get kind of like the Nathan Drake collection for PlayStation 4, but this is gonna be kind of like a hard task. Although I found one in the library, so maybe if I get the chance. But either way, yep, I am very familiar with the Uncharted video game series, and if you notice, these are from when I bought the PlayStation, bought for the first time the PlayStation 3. It came out with these ones. Oh, it also came with Infamous, but I didn't care much for the Infamous game so much that I sold them. But the point is that I had a really fun time with these games. And, well, I can tell you that both of them, it felt kind of like the video game version of Indiana Jones. And you can tell that I was one of those that I raised my eyebrows ever since I saw the trailer of today's movie, which is none other than an Uncharted film. You know that when there is video game adaptation movies, they technically come with the curse. That when you do it, apparently it's gonna show that Hollywood technically doesn't understand what makes a good video game movie, and then they botch it up because of reason 1 or reason 2, because they want big name celebrities, or they just want to have their own creative spin, so they don't feel too familiar to the how can I say, to the story in the video games, and also because there are some elements that can't be translated from one medium to another. You're gonna get all these excuses, but honestly, you can tell that it has been done fine. I mean, look at what happened to the Sonic movie, or some animated movies like Professor Layton and the Eternal Diva. These are good adaptations. Even Street Fighter the movie. Street Fighter the movie wasn't exactly the greatest, but it's a great guilty pleasure, and it still kept itself faithful to the source material. Or what was it? The Mortal Kombat, at least the first one, not the lousy one from last year because of coal. So anyway, I wasn't too keen with this one, especially when I had one glance at the actors, the main cast. Most notably, Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. Don't get me wrong, I like Tom Holland and I like Mark Wahlberg, but there was something foreboding that I felt like something about it doesn't feel like an Uncharted movie. Doesn't feel there is kind of like this sensation that kind of gives you these doubts. And I was just patting my face and I was like, come on, I know there's gonna be different. I know there's gonna be actors. It's gonna be a hard deal to try to separate from what you see in the video game to the movie. It's always that darn task when it's about video game adaptations. And I'm sorry, I did my best. I watched the film and I was disappointed. This was a total disappointing film. And by the way, yeah, I'm gonna come up with a typical thing. It's not the worst I have ever seen. I know there are worse video game adaptation movies. I mean, this is why Uwe Boll existed. But this one, it felt like it had the elements to make at least something. But instead, they just went to the outer route. And just had at the end, it just turned out into a really, really below average film. So below that it blends in with any other adventure film that you have seen in this case. No, it's not like, how can I say, it's not as enjoyable as Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark and the other two movies. Take your pick when you think about Crystal Skull. And also, it's not as enjoyable as King Solomon's Mine. So, unfortunately, this is the most Uncharted feeling I have seen in an Uncharted property. I'm sorry, I just came out with it and I really felt so disappointed into this film that could have been a little bit more. And I know I'm being a little bit too harsh on it because they tried their best, but it had to be listened. So anyway, let's talk it out. For a newcomer might think, okay, what's Uncharted? Well, it centers around this guy named Nathan Drake. He's technically a new type of Indiana Jones. He goes around treasure hunting alongside an old friend named Sully. And that's basically all the things I have to say in order to not spoil it for people who doesn't know much about the story, about the lore of the Uncharted games. So in this one, well, in the movie now it's about, of course, Nathan Drake, our protagonist. He is this time a bartender, played by Tom Holland, and since he had pickpocketing skills and intelligence due to his brother, because when they were children, they tried to get a family treasure or something like that. Then bartender Nathan Drake he encountered this guy named Sully. He, of course, played by Mark Wahlberg. and he technically hires him to be to find the lost treasure of Magayan in order to get their goal before other people who are also interested in finding the treasure gets it. It's as adventurous as Indiana Jones as you can get from this one. Simple enough, and that easily could have been a rush of adrenaline film, and it has, but not as enough as people might expect when you play an Uncharted film, an Uncharted movie. I mean Uncharted video game, because look at this. Can you tell me that this is kind of like one of those situations that any human being could go through? Or how about kind of like this? Well, yeah. It's just Indiana Jones. You just some of the physics you have to throw it out of the window. I can do that. I just kind of wish it was more than that, because honestly, when I was playing the games, it was kind of like a constant rush of adrenaline. It was quick paced, but still, it kind of managed to create kind of like a story, which I'll get to. But I don't know. I felt that this movie has bigger problems than, well, just a simple treasure hunting story. Let's start with the biggest elephant in the room, and many of the fans of Uncharted notice it. That one of the greatest problems that this movie has is that total miscast of the actors. And as much as you can tell that Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg are good actors, they really don't look the part. And here's the thing, I don't blame them. I don't even blame Tom Holland, because it's not that he's trying to act like Nathan Drake, but the problem is that a lot of his line deliveries, he makes it sound more like his Peter Parker Spider-Man, and it's gonna take a long time for him to get out of the shadows of him being Spider-Man. Just like Daniel Radcliffe has had a long time struggling, to get out of the Harry Potter. It's kind of natural. But the thing is that, well, he can study and see how you can act like Nathan Drake. Let's face it, physically, even if he got a little bit more make more muscle and everything, he doesn't look like Nathan Drake. Again, I'm gonna show you again, because this Nathan Drake, he looked like like the typical action hero, square jaw, muscle. But Tom Holland, he's one of those actors that he looks a little bit too young for the role, and that's not exactly a good thing, at least in some cases. So honestly, I feel bad for Tom. He tries his best, but his youth. This is one of those in which his youth, it goes against his role. So it's a total miscast. And of course, Mark Wahlberg as Sully. He might have the age, but he doesn't have the mustache or the kind of little bit of the white hair, because he's kind of old, but still Sully is kind of like a badass and a creepy charmer. But unfortunately, it's not the same charm as the Sully from the games. It's kind of like this two type of charms. the out of Mark Wahlberg, the only charm I can think of him is mostly on the bad movie he's been. You know, like The Happening. I will always, whenever I see his face, I always want to scream, "What? No!" Yeah, that's, and I don't think that this guy can hold a candle with, you know, portraying Sully. And speaking of that mustache, I will spoil you that he does get the mustache, and he gets a cigar in the post-credit scene, and even with that, he doesn't look like Sully. So they may be actors, I know, but honestly, I think they should have tried a little bit harder on making them look the part. Even makeup could help, or at least in the case of Tom Holland, I don't think any makeup will help him have a more square jaw. The poor guy is now cursed to, you know, to look young despite his years. But just in case, he can cosplay at least for his fun. But honestly, when you are portraying a movie, it's different because it's basically making something that is for a general audience. I know there's a general audience, but just don't forget that even if you just want to introduce this thing to kind of like an audience that didn't play Uncharted, there's still an audience that loves Uncharted. They are the ones that are gonna be watching the film. And if you make them the service out of it, they're gonna contribute to even reviewing bombing that movie. And I heard that this is what is actually happening. I mean, how much is it on IMDb? Look at this, 6.7 out of 10. So yeah, I've been talking too much about these guys. Honestly, I didn't even find chemistry between these two characters. It's more like Mark Wahlberg trying to talk about to you know, Tom Holland with, you know, with the usual mannerisms that we got used to Tom Holland. What other characters they are, because I have to even go through these. We got technically the villain played by Antonio Banderas, and honestly, he was more like a stupid villain. You know, the greedy guy who even kills off his father, and then he just wants the treasure out of greed. Just a second, because there's someone else, but there's also kind of like the big bad mercenary played by Tati Gabrielle, who she's basically the main antagonist, and the way she was portrayed, and with all the tattoos and the way she fights all the things, I was imagining in my head that she probably came from Wakanda. No offense, just in case, because the way she fights and the way she talks sometimes, and the way. And her mannerism, it kind of reminded me of Warmonger, you know, from the Black Panther movie. And then, of course, we got Sophia Ali playing Chloe. Chloe is another character from the Uncharted game. She makes her debut on the second game, and I didn't like this character. I didn't like her in that movie. But I gotta confess something. I don't like this character even in the Uncharted games. I'm sorry because I know that Chloe is a fan favorite in the games. But personally for me, I wasn't fond of her. It's not that she's a horrible character, but I wasn't too into this character, so honestly I didn't like this character in both of them, and yeah, I wanted to. She was supposedly kind of like being this femme fatale character who she's always on her own, she doesn't trust anyone and all these things, but honestly, she did came out a little, kind of like a little bit pushing too much into this character that, well, maybe it's because of all the years I have been watching movies that I kind of wasn't fond of these kind of characters. But still, for the role, she wasn't exactly bad, and honestly, to be fair, she's probably, if they could tweak a little bit on her makeup, I mean, maybe she could actually blend in to look like the character from the movie. So basically, that's all I have to say about the actors who. Oh yeah. There's also kind of like that there's always kind of like the second grunt who is kind of like the big the kind of like the best right hand of the villain. Well, it's this Scottish guy, and every time he talked, it was like, what do you say? Okie dokie, it's time for me to talk about the cinematography, in which, well, it looks, to be fair with the movie, it looks good, but it doesn't look great. It's okay at best. Some of the action scenes didn't of course resonate a lot, at least for me. Also, they did try to to do their best, with the typical camera tricks that you see in these action movies, like for example stunt doubles and all these things. I hear people kind of comparing it, to Jackie Chan stunts, and personally, that's an insult to Jackie Chan because, for one thing, Jackie Chan did almost all of his stunts by himself. But no, these ones, they use stunt doubles. And there are some parts that I did notice, the stunt doubles. So, but either way, I did say that some of the parts were good, but I mostly talk about the scenery because some of the parts actually looks good when they get parts that there's nature. It looks amazing and all these things. Although a little bit for the aesthetics, one of the things that I kind of noticed, but maybe I'm wrong, is that most of the time the characters are looking very, very, very clean. And considering that on the video games, Nathan Drake gets dirt all over him, or even blood. But now this one, unfortunately, they wanted to keep Nathan Drake as clean as possible. Wet, yes, but dirty, no. I mean, come on, even Indiana Jones get dirty with the dirt in almost all of his movies and all these things. And yeah, some of there is kind of like a moment that actually imitates Uncharted 3, but I don't know if you can call it a fan service or a disservice, considering that the movie kind of plays out like this is kind of like a prequel to the whole thing, even though there is technically a history in Uncharted 3 about how can I say Nathan Drake's and Sully's past. So it wanted to do its own thing, but still, again, it doesn't feel like Uncharted. I'm gonna keep repeating that all over again. There's, of course, you saw the trailer, kind of like the airplane scene, in which this is probably one of the few moments that it comes close to an Uncharted film, an Uncharted movie. And because in the video game, one of the biggest, how can I say, pet peeves that it has is that Nathan Drake had to do a lot of rock climbing, hitchhiking, and sometimes he gets into the kind of like the most absurd moments in which he has to climb for his life in really dangerous stuff. For example, in Uncharted 2, he has to climb up a train that is dangling on a cliff, and he has to, you know, jump on the debris, the luggage, and also being careful that one of those train vans doesn't fall on top of him. And there are times that he almost falls to his death, unless you're a bad player, and then of course. But still, how many times does he do that on this Uncharted movie? 2 times. That plane scene and there's a climax, and that climax he didn't do a lot of hitchhiking, I'll say. And man, at this point I think that I'm talking a lot more about the elements of the movie, in which this is kind of like the thing that I will start to talk more, kind of like in comparison to between the movie and the video game. And again, I'm aware those two are different mediums and they're trying to translate one another, but but man, that there's some things that kind of raise my eyebrows. Another thing that is basic on the Uncharted games is that you easily go, you know, to it's the treasure hunting, of course. They go to temples, they try to solve puzzles, and that part it has, luckily. It has that part. Although some of those I kind of begin to question about it. And I will tell you right now, because first of all, it does feel like the Uncharted thing, you know, stealing an object, you know, an object that is substantial to find a bigger treasure. That thing I get. Then of course they go to Spain, and there's kind of like this puzzle on a church, which has some interesting aspects, but kind of raise my eyebrows when in some points they encounter in a, how can I say, one of the hidden doors is hidden apparently in a dance room where people are dancing. Although here's the funny thing. The funny thing is that they were looking, you know, for the Inferno door, which according to, you know, the puzzle. And when they go to the door of the Inferno, they see all these people dancing. In my mind, I couldn't help to think that that's the same place where all these people are gonna get killed by the demons from Devilman Crybaby. But still, if that's not awkward enough, Sully had to find out another part of the puzzle. And guess where that part of the puzzle is? On a Papa John's pizza. A Papa John's pizza. You can tell that this was done for publicity. Emo Power Ranger has Krispy Kreme. The Man of Steel had IHOP. Now, every time I'm gonna see Uncharted, I'm gonna think of Papa John's pizza. And I know there's a trailer. I know that there was a commercial of Subway from Uncharted, but no, I still processing in my head that there is this door, there is this keyhole, this Tomb Raider style keyhole in that is located on a Papa John's pizza, and they have it on a they had it encased on a glass window. I'm not I'm not I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. This, if there comes a chance that I'm gonna play, and there comes an Uncharted 5 or an Uncharted spin-off or an Uncharted reboot, I can't wait to see that they're gonna find the treasure, kind of like the treasure of the lost gold of Michael John in Papa John's pizza. Oh my god, yeah. Oh, what are some things that I should have talked about? Okay, let's see what else I gotta talk about before my mind just roams around. Yes. Another thing that I noticed is that because the movie wanted to how can I say, to pander kind of like a wider audience, they don't go about, with the violent deaths or anything. Even some of the deaths are kind of like uninspired. Not even Indiana Jones kind of puts out with that. Especially on, how can I say, Temple of Doom, which even though many people say things about that, is still my favorite Indiana Jones movie. Uncharted does have some people dying in horrible ways. In this movie, no, not by much, and so much that one of the staples of Nathan Drake, that he also has to carry firearms. He barely does it. He barely uses firearms, at least until the final minutes of the movie, and it's just handguns. He doesn't use shotguns. He doesn't use rifles. He doesn't use sniper rifles. And that also makes it feel so Uncharted, so very Uncharted. And now that I remember, another thing that makes this movie less Uncharted is that there is no sneaking. There is no sneaking, going to the enemy and then pull them over. I remember that this is something that I did on the games. So, honestly, I didn't felt that. Do you see what I mean, that this feels so Uncharted? And now I'm gonna go a little bit into it, because one of the things that actually bothered me a lot in this movie is that they wanted to build up this theme of trust. And they hammered the theme so much that I was getting the feeling that this movie it kind of is hammering, the theme of trust as bad as Raya and the Last Airbender, Raya and the Last Dragon. Not even a year has passed, and still that movie bothers me. Okay, but it's not as bad as Raya. But either way, that kind of makes the characters kind of like unlikable, I'll say, because it's always kind of like backtracking. You're a liar. You're a traitor. I don't trust you. You have to trust me, and all these things, and they keep hammering this over and over and over and over again. And honestly, at least unlike the Raya movie, at least that one knows that there are some people that you can't trust. And it kind of did so, even though they have it with this character who, if you play the games, you'll know that this is a character who is kind of like good. I'm talking about Chloe, and of course you kind of know that Sully and Drake, they're practically they trust each other out because they're friends, because that's kind of like the heart of the series. And yeah, it's as basic as it gets. Although I wish they could make it a little bit more into that, because because unfortunately that there are some situations that kind of make Nathan look like a dumbass. I'll say there are some moments in which it's like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Making some questionable movements. And speaking of which, remember that I say many times that I'm not a fan of Chloe. Unfortunately, this movie apparently is aware that, yeah, there's a romance between Nathan and Chloe. But I will say this, unfortunately also. This movie kind of loves to hammer in your head that, oh, they're gonna get together, they're kind of lovesick and all these things and all that. It also have kind of like the Raya problem, in which you get betrayed, but still you know that this girl, because you love her, you know that she's not a bad person here and there. That is one of those weaknesses that I find at least struck in the movie structure. Even though I gotta admit that I like what happened almost at the end. That's something that I have to say. And well, nothing much I have to say. There's of course the sequel hook, of course, that I hope they don't do it, because honestly, I don't know if this movie is successful or not. I think it got its money worth at 37 million from what I read from the articles. But honestly, I just came out just disappointed. It just sucked for me. I played the games enough to, how can I say, just know all the basics of Uncharted. And yeah, I admit, I haven't played the first game. I know that there is a brother named Sam. I don't know what his personality it is. If you give me some time, maybe I'll get the right guts in order to finally play Uncharted 4. But in the meantime, it's another one of those video game adaptations that cannot break the curse, unlike again Professor Layton or Sonic, for what it's worth. And it just comes up as just a very below average film. And considering that there are people who they were clamoring for an Uncharted movie, I think that felt a little bit kind of like disservice. Funnily enough, I did saw that there was a fan film, and the fan film felt more like an Uncharted movie than this movie did. It was just a bland, below average adventure film. It had the elements, but not exactly the heart. So for a movie, I think this is the second movie that it has the Sony PlayStation brand into it, and people are gonna hate me for this, but I think the Ratchet and Clank movie was better than this. Because at least the Ratchet and Clank movie is a little bit faithful to the source material. And granted, I never played a Ratchet and Clank game. But this one, Uncharted, no amount of gold was worth this film. At least for Uncharted fans. But for other people, just introduced in the game.